In astrology, Saturn reveals where life demands structure before reward. Saturn does not show where life is easy. It shows where life demands maturity. The house Saturn occupies reveals the area where growth is slow, deliberate, and earned. This is where responsibility comes before comfort, and structure is built through time. In this part of life, a person is asked to learn boundaries, to say no, to accept limitations, and to resist choices that weaken long-term stability. Saturn also marks where delays, restrictions, or external obstacles may appear beyond personal control. This often creates feelings of insufficiency, insecurity, or being tested by life itself. At first, this pressure can lead to compensation, appearing confident or authoritative without real foundations. But Saturn does not reward appearances. It rewards discipline, realism, and sustained effort. Ultimately, the house Saturn occupies shows the life area where something meaningful can only be built through responsibility, patience, and time. Saturn in the first house brings lifelong questions about identity. Who am I? What am I allowed to become? This placement indicates early struggles in forming a stable sense of self. The person is pushed to become realistic about who they are, rather than who they wish to appear as. Saturn here demands authenticity. The image shown to the world must reflect inner reality, not a defensive mask. Self-confidence is not given easily with this placement. It develops slowly and is directly connected to how solid the person's inner structure becomes over time. Saturn in the first house often creates a sense that life itself is dangerous. To survive, the individual may build emotional walls and become guarded. There is a persistent feeling of never being good enough to fully express oneself. Because of this, social interaction and self-expression can feel restricted. The person may take responsibility for problems that are not truly their own, blaming themselves for life's difficulties. This placement can give a serious, reserved, and disciplined appearance. The individual often survives through hard work, responsibility, and self-control rather than ease or spontaneity. The desire for social status and success can become stronger than the need for self-expression. In early life, insecurity may delay visible success. In some cases, Saturn in the first house may also indicate physical limitations present from birth, reinforcing the lesson that strength must be built patiently over time. Saturn in the second house challenges a person's relationship with value, security, and personal resources. This placement often begins with a deep sense of lack, a fear of not having enough, especially in material terms. Financial insecurity or scarcity consciousness can shape early life experiences. Through material struggles and practical challenges, the individual is pushed to discover something essential. True security must be built, not borrowed from others. Saturn in the second house blocks easy access to external support. Attempts to rely on others for financial or emotional safety tend to fail, forcing the person to develop their own resources and self-worth. Discipline is required here. Money matters demand planning, patience, and responsibility. Early financial difficulties often teach the value of effort and long-term stability. With this placement, there is usually a cautious approach to money. Risky or luck-based investments are avoided. Saving comes naturally, sometimes excessively. The fear of not having enough can make sharing resources difficult. Yet Saturn teaches an important lesson. Holding on too tightly can block new growth. Although this placement may create a tendency toward miserliness rooted in fear, the person may try to appear indifferent to money or overly generous. When Saturn's lessons are integrated, the result is a grounded relationship with resources, careful, ethical, and respectful of value. Saturn's sense of inner lack can push the person toward ambition and financial achievement. Yet it can also lead to a simpler life, where contentment is found not in excess, but in sufficiency. Saturn in the third house brings challenges in communication, learning, and close relationships. Early in life, interactions with siblings, neighbors, or the immediate environment may feel heavy, demanding, or restrictive. This placement often places responsibility on the individual within the family. The person may grow up as the eldest sibling or feel burdened by duties toward brothers or sisters, sometimes experiencing authority conflicts. Through communication difficulties, Saturn pushes the individual to work on perception, listening, and expression. Feeling unheard, misunderstood, or isolated in early years is common. Saturn in the third house can indicate early struggles with speech, learning, or education. School years may feel slow, difficult, or discouraging. Learning often happens through effort, repetition, and discipline rather than ease. There may be delays or obstacles related to media, writing, transportation, short journeys, trade, or daily communication. These areas often become responsibilities rather than sources of pleasure. A fear of not knowing enough or being misunderstood can develop. This fear may push the person to talk excessively, explain constantly, or prove their intelligence. When insecurity is confronted, Saturn redirects the individual toward genuine knowledge. The person learns to structure their thinking, refine their written and spoken expression, and communicate with precision. At its highest expression, Saturn in the third house grants a focused, methodical, disciplined, and scientific mind. It supports serious learning, careful teaching, and the ability to guide others who struggle with understanding. Saturn in the fourth house brings serious lessons through family, home, and emotional foundations. This placement touches the deepest layer of life, the roots, the sense of belonging, and inner security. Early life often carries weight. Family circumstances may be shaped by factors beyond personal control: social conditions, economic hardship, loss, or fate. The environment can feel restrictive, demanding early maturity. With Saturn here, the individual may be forced to grow up too soon. Responsibilities toward family can appear early, and emotional support may feel limited. Parents may seem distant, strict, overly disciplined, or emotionally unavailable. Family bonds are often held together by duty rather than warmth. Love may feel conditional, given in response to achievement, responsibility, or strength. As a result, the person may grow up feeling that they were not fully welcomed as they were. Emotional needs may have gone unmet, creating deep-rooted fear, anxiety, or a sense of inner deficiency. With Saturn in the fourth house, external sources of security rarely feel reliable. The individual is pushed toward developing inner emotional strength, resilience, and self-support. This does not mean emotional isolation or extreme self-sufficiency. Saturn's lesson here is not, "I need no one," but "I can support myself without denying connection." When this lesson is integrated, Saturn becomes a reward rather than a burden. Inner security, once built, cannot be taken away by external circumstances. This placement often creates a strong need to build lasting foundations: stable homes, land, property, or unmovable family structures. Saturn in the fourth house can draw a person toward history, ancestry, construction, agriculture, ecology, or working within one's homeland. In later life, it may indicate a quieter, more withdrawn existence focused on inner life and personal foundations. Saturn in the fifth house brings tests around joy, love, creativity, and self-expression. This placement often creates a deep sense of inadequacy in areas that should feel spontaneous: romance, pleasure, hobbies, children, and creative expression. The individual may experience fear of exposure or performance anxiety. Love, romance, or having children can feel heavy, restrictive, or emotionally demanding. Natural impulses toward play, affection, and creativity may feel blocked. The person may see themselves as uninteresting, unlovable, or too rigid to be enjoyed. As a result, self-confidence in these areas weakens. In response, Saturn in the fifth house can create overcompensation. The person may act as if they are always having fun, constantly in love, or endlessly expressive. They may dominate social spaces, organize constant entertainment, or turn light romantic encounters into serious commitments too quickly. Beneath this behavior lies a fear of rejection, loneliness, and emotional scarcity. This fear can unconsciously lead the person to demand proof of love, from partners or even from children, pushing others away instead of creating closeness. When boundaries are accepted and responsibility replaces performance, Saturn reveals its deeper lesson. True joy and love are not proven through intensity, but built through honesty, patience, and consistency. This placement asks the individual to stop imitating external models of pleasure and affection. Instead, work itself must become a source of satisfaction, and love must be produced gradually from within. Saturn in the fifth house creates strong inner pressure to create. This pressure pushes creative efforts beyond inspiration toward disciplined practice. In artistic or creative pursuits, Saturn here favors structure, routine, and sustained effort over fleeting inspiration. In its shadow expression, Saturn in the fifth house may manifest as rigidity or excessive control over children and romantic partners. Growth comes through adopting a mature model of love, making conscious choices, respecting boundaries, and taking responsibility for the consequences of those choices. When Saturn is in the sixth house, responsibility, discipline, and limitation are experienced through work, health, daily routines, and life's necessities. Saturn's purpose here is not perfection, but integrity. Even while performing undervalued or repetitive tasks, the individual is asked to remain inwardly whole and self-respecting. At its highest expression, this placement creates a person who is diligent, reliable, attentive, and disciplined. Obstacles do not discourage them. Consistency becomes their strength. In its early expression, however, Saturn in the sixth house often brings feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. The individual may feel forced to take on tasks no one else wants, working as if carrying a burden rather than a choice. There can be a fear of being useless, replaceable, or losing one's job. This fear may lead to a servant-like relationship, with work showing up obediently, staying late after others leave, and tying self-worth to productivity. Such a relationship with work is unsustainable. Saturn may eventually bring unemployment or disruption, forcing the individual to restructure how they work and why they work. Daily organization and time management can also become problematic. The person may insist on perfect timing, yet repeatedly fall behind schedule, struggling to use time effectively. Rigid routines may be imposed, both on oneself and on others, or the individual may encounter authority figures who enforce strict schedules and expectations. Health issues with this placement are often chronic rather than acute. Saturn may manifest through skeletal problems, bones, teeth, knees, or long-term conditions related to stress, depression, or psychosomatic strain. Ultimately, Saturn in the sixth house teaches that meaningful work must include self-respect, balance, and realistic limits. Service without self-erasure becomes the true lesson. Saturn's lessons are never easy, but they are always meaningful. In this first part, we explored Saturn from the first to the sixth house, the areas of life where responsibility is learned before reward. In the next video, we will continue with Saturn in the 7th to the 12th houses. If you want to deepen your understanding of astrology through structure, history, and meaning, consider subscribing to this channel. And in the comments, let me know, which house is your Saturn in, and where do you experience the greatest challenges?